What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Masterclass series from the R-Resource. Today we have a reoccurring guest now, my good friend and coach Bill Hart. Absolute stud. Just spent some time with him last week, and Ken Perry. So we brought him back. I got two questions for the man, the myth, the legend today. One is more real estate related, and one is mortgage related, and I'm going to get right into it. And I was thinking about the show this week, and these two topics came up. And I was like, man, I know I just had them on the show, but nobody better to pick their brains for these two questions. First one is this, and it's just going to be a comment, and then I'm just going to kind of let you run with your thoughts on this. So I think it was HP David Packard said, more companies die of indigestion than starvation. Now, what does that mean to you? Probably more in the mortgage space than it does real estate, but what does that mean to you right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a great quote, and we use it quite a bit in coaching. And what it speaks to is it's not lack of opportunity, right? It's lack of execution. There's no shortage of things that can be initiated or strategic bets that we can make. The real issue is, and we hear it all the time in coaching, is, and you know this, Ryan. I mean, it comes down to, well, here's a classic example. Somebody just told me today, I'm going to work on that when we slow down. Really? But it's so common. It's so common that people think that there's a bit of a bell curve, right? In real estate, if we look at we're in it right now. We're in the middle of the hot purchase season. We know that's going to go on until, September, and kids go back to school, and then I'm going to fine tune my systems. Yeah, that's a bad idea. Not in 2019. That might have worked in 1985, but that's not a good play today.
The thing that catches me when I saw that quote, and again, I was already starting to write the show, and we pivoted to an interview style, is I think that's really true, especially for mortgage, not so much for real estate, but there's a lot of just bloat in corporate America, but mainly in mortgage. And so dying of indigestion versus they're not starving, in my opinion, necessarily for talent. I think it's more of you just got to clear it out a little bit. You got to thin out, the company and maybe even the executives and managers. And so I think that's
to that
true.
Point, right? I mean, to that point, I just had a conversation this week with a regional, and he was telling me that they had hired this guy as an area, might have influenced 300 to 500,000 in volume, something like 500 million in volume. And he says to me in a shocked way, because we're talking about minimum standards and performance improvement plans and how to kind of thin the herd a little bit. And he said, well, man, he's worked for, and he lists a bank, and then he lists a large correspondent lender. And he said, for like 15 years, I mean, you'd think he'd know how to do this. And I said, you said that to me as though you believed that expression. Like, I don't believe that. And I think that what we've got, so I'm going to offend some people right now inadvertently, and I don't mean to, but I'm just going to speak truth as I see it.
Keep it real, man. That's what we do here.
Well, here's what I figured out, man. Some of that is just, becoming an old guy and realizing that I can be a little cranky, and I'm going to probably say things that I wouldn't have said 20 years ago. And to say I don't care is not appropriate. I do care. I empathize with people, and I love people. And if anybody knows me, that's how I'm wired. Yeah. But I'm not afraid to speak truth. Here's truth as I see it. In the mortgage space, we have more middle-aged, and that might even be a little generous. Guys, for the most part, probably 30 pounds overweight, that are playing a lot of golf. They're going on some pretty nice trips, rewards trips. And they're available for brush fires and pricing exceptions. And at some point they get involved in the recruiting process, but they are seldom the initiators of those dialogues. And if we're really honest, they would be in what I would call a custodial role, an ambassadorship, which has been a really great gig. That has probably been, if we're honest, overpaid over the last 10 years. I'll say since about 2010. And with the shift that's happening in the market right now, those guys have to feel the heat on the back of their necks, Ryan. And so here's what I want to say. I want to say, because I coach enough people that are interconnected with these prototypes I'm describing.
Yeah.
they either are them or they know somebody, right? And so I would say, look, it's going to be a tough conversation. I get that. There are a lot of tough conversations that need to be happening right now. But here's what gets in the way. In a coaching session, it's always relationship. Always. People will say, dude, I can't have that conversation. I mean, I just had them over to our house for dinner. Like we've gone on vacations together. So what's the alternative? Do you just, it's like if somebody had a 5-pound tumor growing off their forehead, like we see sometimes on National Geographic. Right. I mean, would you just be like, no, you look great.
No, it's good, man. It's all good. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, love the comb over. I don't think so. I think you'd say, dude, you should probably see a doctor.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm saying the other side of the relationship issue is you're going to have that conversation because that's what's real. That's an honest conversation that needs to take place. That person then has an opportunity, right? They're either going to say victim mentality, woo, 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 it's always been good. Like I got a contract, I've got an employment agreement. What are you talking about? Or they can step into the opportunity and say, you know what, no matter what age I am, if I'm 30 or if I'm 62, I could be better. So how do I step into that? How do I become better? But Ryan, I think our industry in the mortgage space, real estate's another conversation. Let's get to that one. But on the mortgage side, I just hope those guys have been prudent with their money. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
It's been a good ride. Nobody's calling you evil or lazy. It's the way the mortgage industry has evolved, but it's a new day. It is a new day, and we all need to step our game up.
Yeah, it was funny. We spent time together at the executive roundtable at the Master Coach that you put together, and then just kind of, I always try to stay connected east to west coast, and I was talking to other regionals that weren't there. But what was weird is we had the same conversations and takeaway from being at your event and then just private conversations. They said the same thing. It wasn't as nice as you said, which was like the most gangster thing that anybody's ever said, but in the nicest way. Like we just set the show on fire. Holy smokes, some people are getting uncomfortable, but I'm going to double down on it. But they were like, Ryan, what drives me crazy? What? Tell me. Yeah, I'd love to know. In my company, and obviously won't name names, we have so many legacy executives that are just there because they've been there for a long time, and I don't know what to do, right? I don't know how, they don't want to get rid of them, but they kind of do. It kind of comes back to your point of nobody wants to necessarily get rid of a person. Everybody's compassionate. Sure. But hey, man, you got to also make a choice. It doesn't matter if you're middle-aged or older than that. You have a choice. Sure. Either you're gonna die and just kind of fade into oblivion of what Mortgage 1980 used to be, or you're going to adapt, and thrive. So
totally,
that's the choice. You're a legacy person that doesn't add value because you're a legacy person that doesn't add value. Now you could be a legacy person that dusted themselves off and figured out video and social and consumer direct. Your age doesn't matter, but dude, from me and from a lot of people that are me in every organization across America, let me just tell every executive, figure it out. One way or the other, man. Choose one, as Bill just said, much nicer than I did, but we need you. We need the value there. And if you're not adding value, there's a solution there too. Man, this is in your face. Sorry, everybody.
Absolutely. Well, you know what it needs to be, Ryan? Look, somebody needs to say this. And here's the thing that I think sets the age issue aside. I'm 64, right? Yeah. It would be pretty easy for me to say, man, there's these young coaches that know 29-year-old girl. She's pretty sharp, and that's a fact. But you know what? I make it a point to stay relevant. Everything that I do is all focused around relevancy. I'm not coaching what I coached 15 years ago. It's a whole new day. And every single day, I have a hunger for pouring white paint into my bucket. How do I become better? How do I bring more value? How is that something that I can bring to my client? What is my client struggling with that I need to know about? So that's all that I would call out. This is not an age issue. Yeah. This is a mindset issue where you decide either I want it the way it was and I'm going to fold my arms and say I'm going to fight for this agreement that I've got. And I've seen that so many times. That agreement was established in a different market.
Yep.
It's a new day. And so now just say, okay, instead of digging in your heels, just how do you get better?
Yep.
How do you provide more value?
Yeah, if you're an executive that happened to be offended by that, first of all, good. I'm not saying that to put you down. I don't think Bill is either. But it's also like, hey, choose relevancy, choose to evolve.
Totally.
We want everybody here, but we're not swimming in profits anymore. We're 3 months removed from losing $200 per loans. Right now, the best of the best win, and so we don't have an environment where we just get to pull everybody along for the ride. Like the best of best win, the cream rises to the top. So you're right. It's not about age. It's just choosing relevancy. That's why
Totally.
This year I was like, man, I have a relevancy is king talk that I do when I travel, and I was like, should I continue to evolve that or dust it off or let it go? And I'm like, no, you know what? This is still, as you said, relevancy is king. Like for the executive, for the CEO,
irony
for the
there.
LO.
If you're going to have a talk on relevancy, you can't let it get dusty.
Yeah. But sometimes like it was really, am I going to let it go and go on to something else? Or am I going to evolve it and continue?
No,
and I challenge them. It's like, no, it's still relevant. Maybe people don't always respond to it. But it's still relevant. It's still important from the top down, from the absolute top down. And there's some great organizations out there, and you know them and I know them. Kudos to them. They don't have this issue, but there's a lot of them that do.
Right.
And there's going to be some tough conversations that need to be had from the CEO down. And there's also, you coach a lot of young studs too that deserve to be in some of those spots.
Absolutely.
And
that to me is what is most exciting, man. Truly. See, watching some of this young blood step in, very much the way that you are. I mean, I'm gonna call that out. I love to watch you as a leader. I think about a year ago, right, we did a program with a group of your branch managers and LOs, and the way that you invest in your people, the way that you are relevant to your people, to me, that's the model of what we're seeing. And there's a number of young men and women that I know just like you that is very exciting to me, to begin to see people speaking truth to it in the mortgage industry and in the real estate industry. Both there are some there are some sacred cows, let's just say, that probably need to make some really good burgers right about now. Right? Because it's a new day, man. It's a new day. Yeah. And so what's exciting to me is to see new relevant conversations about compensation, adding value. In that meeting that you referred to, we heard somebody say on the mortgage side that they were communicating out to their entire organization that, look, if you have an LOA, if you have a loan originator assistant, they need to hear the conversation that they need to be involved in actually driving revenue.
Yeah.
This is no longer a role that can exclusively, at least not at the corporate level. You can do so individually, of course, but at a corporate level, that's just a line item. That's a cost. And to me, what that means is a percentage of their days or week probably needs to be spent dialing into the database, teeing up opportunities for the loan originator. I've always coached that with my best LOs, loan originators that I've coached in the past, but now entire companies are starting to see that.
Yeah. And you know what? To the organizations that have figured this out and they're prioritizing talent regardless of age, kudos to you. I'm not saying everybody's guilty, but there's several organizations that are still letting that legacy person just stick around because, look, I'm a loyal guy. If you take my DISC or SDI, loyalty's number one. So I get that. It is, sometimes to a fault. So I get that piece. But we have to prioritize talent. Kudos to the organizations that have figured that out. And for the organizations that haven't, hopefully you take, some of this challenge and take our words sincerely that it's just that. It's so we can win. And those organizations don't get pulled down with, the legacy issue that is. So to transfer that, I feel like talent winning out is the challenge on the real estate side as well. I want to talk to you about teams. And, for those of you that don't know Bill, he coaches several different industries, not just mortgage. I think you've actually even coached. Didn't you coach Tom Ferry?
No, I never coached Tom. I worked for his dad.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yep.
So you've been in the real estate space. There's
Tom worked for me.
That's what it was. Okay.
Tom was in my sales department, and so anytime I'll see him, he'll say, "Coach," and he'll say, "Hello, sales," because that's how I would always start the morning with the bullpen, right? Is I would broadcast that out. "Hello, sales."
That's why I got it, because we were somewhere in San Diego, and he said that to you. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you coached Tom. Anyways, you've been in real estate and several other industries. You're not just in mortgage, but what I see, and I've seen this for a long time on the real estate side, is it's back to talent winning out. they struggle to build really strong real estate teams. So there's a lot of turnover. For some reason, they can't. And the analogy I made to a good friend the other day that was struggling with her team is I said, you can't, it's a talk that we gave called Bricks, Walls, and Cathedrals. You can't scale a business when you're constantly going back to that first brick that you built in the team or the second or the third and having to like restructure it. Oh, this one's not. Oh, and then you go back up and you go to the second wall, you start building that again. You look back, you're like, oh man, the third brick's, so you're constantly going back and having to change what you've built.
It's a great analogy.
That is, you can't scale a business like that because you're always going back. And so why do they struggle? You've been doing this longer than I have. You've coached them. Why do they struggle doing that? And then what's the pivot? Like what needs to change so these realtors that are very, very talented continue to hit the ceiling? And I don't want to see that. I want them to be able to scale a strong business, a strong team, know that it's super solid. They don't have to go back and fix that first or second or third brick. What is it and what needs to change?
Yeah, man. So, the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule has been around for everybody's heard of it. Steve Harney, arguably one of the superior minds in real estate, the founder of Keeping Current Matters, now sort of semi-retired and living in Florida, as well he should. But I remember him probably 10 years ago at Sales Mastery saying it's more like 93-7.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the current percentages, but let's say it's still 93.7, so that 7% of the real estate agents in the country are doing 93% of the business.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, right? But that also means conversely that 93% of the realtors share 7%. And we know that's true because NAR tells us year in, year out, whatever the number is, that the average realtor does 6 to 10 deals a year, right? So let's start at the bottom and work our way up. They're called what I call dabblers. I refer to those real estate agents.
Dabblers, yeah.
And again, when I say that, I'm not, it always sounds like I'm broad brushing a group and calling them horrible or evil. It's just the way it works. I've been in that business for 30 years, right? So I used to manage an office with 100 real estate agents in it. I know what that's like. And so here's the temptation, Ryan. You can get a real estate license. You can have a desk or a counter or whatever in a real estate office and dabble. You show up for the sales meetings, you go out on Caravan, maybe you just like real estate and you bump into a transaction a few times a year and you make, depending on where you live, 20, 30, 50, 75 grand a year by bumping into deals. That's not a strategy, right? That's the lowest end of the food chain in real estate. Decent people, but not running their business like a business. At the top end, that 7%, those are I told you I was going to introduce you to Kenny Klaus. I'd love to see you have him on your show. He and his team, I think, do 500 units a year in Phoenix, Arizona. Mike Mazik also in Arizona, probably about that level. Brett Tanner that I used to coach, very similar to that. What's different with these people that have built these massive teams that do tons of volume? And so here's the tipping point. I think the tipping point is when I try and do that in the beginning as a realtor, the very first thing that I typically do is I get a buyer's agent, right? Then I might, at some point, I might get 2. And then I say, well, now I should have another agent that will actually do listings too. And so the temptation is at some point, if I as the rainmaker don't provide enough value to that individual that I brought on, at some point they're going to say, why do I need you?
Yeah.
And so fair enough, they matriculate, they go on, they do their own thing. But that now becomes a fear, right? So now there's this ceiling that I bump my head against, like, well, I can never go past that. So what happens at the top level is they figure out how to provide an environment that says, you'll never get this anyplace else. What we've created here creates an environment where you use your gifts, you use your skills, you do the thing that you're great at. And, I coach a couple in Dallas, Texas that just recently went through this, and they were looking for the right individual to take over their business, Ryan, because they were getting a bit older. They wanted to go ahead and retire. They wanted to move to Arkansas, which I guess is what you do in Texas if you're going to retire.
Yeah.
They have a lake house. So They wanted to make that move. But they had to find a guy that wouldn't go out and do it on his own because he saw the value. So, I know it's sort of a nebulous answer, but that's the answer. I think the specifics you get into with your coach or your other organization that you work with. But to me, that's the key, is you've got to create an environment where there's enough value for being a part of this team that shifting over
Yeah.
never really becomes an issue.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it. What I would say, kind of being on the outside looking in, is where everybody, I can't remember how you said it, but it was like where everybody's talent is being maximized. So for
Right.
me, building teams, I'm big on that. So if you're the sales guy or gal and that's where you crush it, Gary Vee talks about, he says, you know what, in his opinions, like go double and triple and quadruple down on that. And
Right.
screw, he says it in a different way, but screw the things you're bad at. Like, don't be trying to, really focus on something that you're never going to obtain. Quadruple
Totally.
down on what you're good at and get support around you to help you with the details. So I think that's what I would do outside
Totally.
looking in, is kind of really like leverage that principle. If you're
Yep.
the salesperson, you should be out doing sales listings, even cold call sales, expireds. Figure out a way where your day, your week, your month is nothing but maximizing your talents in sales. And that may take, because I see a lot of them have junior realtors and stuff, and I'm thinking, well, why? If you're the best salesperson on the team, let's put you out there. And
Sure.
then if we need people to help execute the X's and O's, there's a lot of people out there that's their talent. Okay, let's find those people
That's
to
right.
come around you, and they love the X's and O's just as much as you love sitting down and talking to, potential clients or a happy hour or whatever.
Sure.
I don't think we pursue that enough. I think
Yep.
that we have this general idea of let's just get good people around us and things will work out. That's not true. We got to prioritize each individual aspect of the team. Sales, ops, leadership. You know this better than anybody. A good loan officer, good realtor doesn't make a great manager. It
Totally.
absolutely doesn't. More often than not, it's the opposite.
For
Yet,
sure.
For some reason, that still happens. What's funny, in the moment as you were talking, I realized that our first conversation with the legacy and the executives also applies to real estate. I have a friend right now that kind of got sick of, and I won't name any names out of respect, but it was a bigger real estate company. Same situation, kind of lost respect for the long in the tooth executive that was running that company. He's a smart guy, and he just said, you know what? I'm going to do it. They're not listening. They're not evolving. It was a bigger, older company. Went out and started his own gig, and kudos to him. In his 6th or 7th month, he's doing $17 million. I think he's attracted 20 realtors to his small office.
Wow.
And crushing it because it's just a new, fresh mindset. He got sick with the old and said, you know what, I'll do it myself. So I guess that's
Love
the
that.
danger, kind of full circle, is if you don't hear and listen to Bill's words of wisdom, that could be the outcome that could, and we're seeing it happen every day.
Yeah, one of the things that, as we think about this real estate equation, Ryan, that I think is interesting, I was speaking to somebody the other day who had found this person for their team, and I spoke to them. So I'm speaking to the person who others might fear could go on to compete with them, right? And I wanted to find out what his mindset was about. I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not. And he said, and I didn't call it out like, gee, aren't you thinking about going to go do this on your own someday? But I just wanted to understand how his mind was structured. So I just interviewed him a little bit. And he said, well, I come from a large family, 5 sisters. I was the youngest. I don't need the spotlight. I am happy to be the lieutenant to her. In this case, he's working for a woman who's the rainmaker. And I love just like putting check marks in boxes. I know what to do. And I make and he entered a number, that was a pretty good number. And like, he's ecstatic. So don't kid yourself. The world is full of, I call them worker bees. And I don't mean that in a diminishing way. But what I mean is, man, just show me what to do. I don't have to be the visionary. I don't have to dream. I don't have to your point about the cathedral, I don't have to be the one that sits back and says, what could it look like? I'll just be the one to carry the bricks. Like,
Right.
I'll load them up. Let's do that.
And they're all important.
Find that person. They're all important.
Google that. If you haven't heard my talk on that, just Google bricks, walls, and cathedrals. It's an awesome principle. It actually goes into building teams for real estate.
Nice.
And there's people, as to your point, that love building bricks. They don't
Totally.
need they don't even need to build the wall. They're dusting off their bricks. They're making sure they're square.
Absolutely.
They take excitement in that. Okay. And then there's a guy that loves just building walls, right? And
That's right.
and then there's a guy that's sitting back. That's usually the executive CEO, kind of making sure that cathedral gets built. There's good principles in that. You can Google that. All right, guys, we went long. There was a lot of awesome nuggets. We we may have offended some people today, but true to our nature, it's in good spirits. We want it for the right reasons. We love you. Share down below in the comment section what your favorite part of the interview was. If you have questions for Bill or myself, throw them down there as well. But you got to share this. You got to share it with as many people as you can. Play it at your team meetings. If you may not play the whole 20-minute interview, but maybe take 5 minutes away. If we struck a nerve, talk about it. And yes, be better. Doesn't matter your age. Be better. Cream rises to the top. Talent wins out, and that's both in real estate and lending. Bill, you're awesome, man. Thanks so much. Guys,
always a pleasure, bud.
We will see you all next week.